Welcome back to the deep dives. You guys have been sitting in some really fascinating stuff about Tesla and India and the EV market there. So we're going to take a deep dive into that today. We're trying to figure out, is Tesla really going to make a big splash in India? What's going to happen with EVs there? And we're using this episode of the EV Pulse podcast to kind of guide us.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is that India's already got a pretty exciting EV scene going on, right? Like they've got their own companies that are really making some moves, but now you throw Tesla into the mix, that's where things could get really interesting.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, there's been so much talk about it, especially after that big meeting between Elon Musk and Prime Minister Modi back in 2023. It kind of felt like they were, circling each other for a while.
Yeah, their meeting was definitely a turning point. You got to remember, for years it was this back and forth, right? Tesla wanted India to lower those import taxes. India wanted Tesla to commit to local manufacturing first. The EV Pulse podcast actually had this timeline graphic showing how it was like a stalemate, especially with those huge import duties. But after Musk and Modi met, things really started to change.
Yeah, it was like a sudden shift. Like India said, okay, we'll cut those import taxes by 70%, but there was a catch. Tesla had to invest like $500 million in factories there. That's a pretty big gamble. So if you're Elon Musk, what do you do?
Well, think about it from India's perspective. They get this huge investment, they boost their manufacturing, and they really push EVs forward, right? But for Tesla, there's already some serious competition there. Like Tata Motors, their Tiago EV is really killing it in the affordable EV segment. Why do you think that is? Just the price.
Well, the EV Pulse podcast said that the Tiago's way cheaper than anything Tesla's offering right now. But, I mean, maybe there's more to it than that, right? Like, what about features or brand loyalty or even those government incentives? Could that be playing a role?
Yeah, you're totally right. It's never just one thing. I mean, the Tiago is super affordable, which is a big deal in India, right? People are really conscious of price. But Tata's also got this long history there, and they know Indian consumers, and they've made the Tiago like this practical, reliable car. It just makes sense for a lot of people.
Yeah, Tata's playing it smart, for sure. And the EV Pulse podcast said they've got like 72% of the market share. That's huge. So, can Tesla really compete with that? Especially since they're known for being, kind of pricey. Will they have to change their strategy?
And this is where things get really interesting because Tesla's been on this hiring spree in India, right? But here's the thing. They're mostly hiring for sales, service, charging infrastructure, not manufacturing. So what did that tell you? Maybe they're thinking about something different.
Okay, so what are they thinking? The host of EV Pulse said that maybe Tesla's going to try importing cars first. Target those luxury buyers. Does that sound like a good plan?
Well, it could be. I mean, importing lets them kind of test the waters, right? See what the demand's like, build up some hype, all without diving headfirst into building factories and stuff. It's like a phased approach. Maybe they start with imports, then work with Indian suppliers for parts, and eventually build a Gigafactory there. It's a way to minimize the risk.
So it's like a chess game. Careful mooks, right? But even with those imports, the price is still going to be high. EV Pulse estimated that a Model 3 could cost around 60 lakh. That's like $72,000. So will people in India really pay that much for a Tesla?
That's the big question, right? It all comes down to the understanding the Indian EV market. How much does price really matter to people? Will they be willing to spend that much for a Tesla, for the brand, for the tech, or will they stick with the cheaper options?
And, those cheaper options aren't bad at all. We talked about the Tiago, but there's also Mahindra. They've got some great EVs too, so it's not going to be easy for Tesla.
No, it won't be easy. But before we jump to conclusions, we should look at the challenges Tesla might face in India, specifically, the things that could make or break their success.
Okay, so we've been talking about all the hurdles Tesla's going to face in India, like building enough charging stations and figuring out if people will actually spend that much on a car. But let's zoom out for a sec. EV Pulse kind of hinted that Tesla coming to India could actually be huge for EVs in the entire country. Not just for Tesla, but for everybody. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, it could be like a catalyst, right? Like Tesla coming in could make everyone move towards electric cars even faster. More competition usually means more innovation, so maybe the other companies will step up their game even more. And in the end, it's the consumers who win, right? They get more choices, better tech.
It's like throwing a rock in a pond and watching the ripples spread out.
Exactly. And those ripples, they could even go beyond India. If Tesla really gets a foothold there, starts building a ton of cars, they could start exporting to other countries. India could become like a major EV player on the world stage.
Wow, that's a big thought. India not just making EVs for themselves, but for everyone. That would be huge for their economy. jobs, exports, you name it.
For sure. But it's not just about the money, right? India has some serious pollution problems, and switching to EVs could help clean up the air. That's a big win for the environment, too.
Yeah, you're right. It's not just about business and tech. It's about making the planet a better place.
That's exactly it. And India, with so many people and so much energy use, they have a big role to play in this whole transition to electric.
So even if Tesla doesn't completely take over the Indian EV market, them being there could still make a positive impact in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. It's about creating this momentum, getting people excited about EVs, and that's where the government comes in too. I mean, they've already talked about those tax breaks to attract Tesla, but what else can they do to really help EVs grow in India?
Yeah, good point. What kind of support would really make a difference?
Well, for starters, imagine if they built this massive network of charging stations all over India, not just in the big cities, but on highways, even in rural areas.
Yeah, that makes sense. People need to know they can charge their car wherever they go. No one wants to worry about running out of juice in the middle of nowhere.
Right. And another thing they could do is offer some financial help to people who want to buy an EV, like tax breaks or discounts.
Yeah, especially for people who aren't super rich, right? If you could make EVs more affordable, then way more people would buy them.
You got it. And don't forget about research and development, investing in battery tech. That's super important.
That's a long-term play, but it could pay off big time, right? India could become a leader in EV tech, not just a buyer.
Exactly. If the government, the companies, and the researchers all work together, they could turn India into this hub for EV innovation.
That's pretty exciting. But we've been talking a lot about Tesla. What about the Indian companies like Tata and Mahindra? They seem to be doing pretty well already.
Oh, yeah, they're definitely in a good spot. They understand the Indian market, they know how to build cars there, and they've got those affordable EVs that people really like.
EV Pulse even asked if these Indian companies could go global. Could they become big players, not just in India, but all over the world?
It's an interesting question. I mean, they've got the potential. They could use their success in India and expand to other countries, especially in places where people are looking for cheap, reliable EVs.
But it won't be easy. They'll be competing with the big guys. Tesla, Volkswagen, BYD, they all want a piece of that global EV market.
It's a global race for sure. The winners will be the ones who can keep innovating, stay ahead of the curves, and just build a ton of cars.
This whole shift to electric, it's pretty amazing to watch, isn't it? It feels like we're on the edge of something big.
I totally agree. And as we learn more about electric vehicles, we're not just talking about cars and batteries. We're talking about a new way of thinking about the future, a future that's more sustainable, more equitable.
Man, it's crazy how fast things have changed with electric cars, right? It wasn't that long ago that they were like this niche thing. Now it feels like every car company on the planet is trying to get in on the action.
Yeah, it's wild. And, as we've been talking about, Tesla coming to India just adds another layer to this whole story.
It does. We've covered a lot of ground, right? The good stuff, the bad stuff, how it could shake things up in India, even those Indian companies going global.
We talked about those government policies too, and how good this could be for the environment, right? Less pollution, cleaner air.
Totally. But in the end, it all comes down to the people buying the cars, right? Will people in India actually want electric cars? And if they do, who are they going to buy from?
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it? And that's what EV Pulse wanted to know too. They did this poll with their viewers.
Oh, yeah, I remember. They asked, would you buy a Tesla even if it costs more? Or would you stick with something cheaper from Tata or Mahindra?
It's a tough choice. I mean, Tesla's got that brand power, right? They're known for high-tech, cool-looking cars that go fast.
But Tata and Mahindra, they've got their own thing going, right? They know the Indian market, their cars are reliable, and they're not afraid to compete on price.
Yeah, it's like Tesla's the big, flashy newcomer, and Tata and Mahindra are the hometown heroes ready to defend their turf.
And it's not like Tesla's got it in the bag. They're going to have to really convince people to spend that extra money, especially when there are other good options out there.
And they got to figure out that charging situation. Without enough charging stations, it doesn't matter how cool your car is. You're not going to get very far.
It's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. You've got those established Indian companies doing their thing, and now Tesla's coming in, ready to shake things up.
It's like a classic underdog story, but with electric cars.
And, what happens in India could affect the whole world, right? Could this be where we see some crazy new technology or business ideas? Could those Indian companies become major players globally?
Those are some big questions. I guess we'll have to wait and see how this whole thing unfolds. It's definitely an exciting time to be following the EV world.
Definitely is. But, even though EV Pulse was focused on Tesla, I think we learned that there's a much bigger story here.
Yeah, it's about the whole world shifting towards electric, a change that could make the planet cleaner and healthier. And India, with all its people and its growing economy, they're going to be a big part of that.
So the next time you hear about EVs in India, just remember that it's not just about one company or one country. It's about all of us.
It's about making choices that will create a better future for everyone.
Absolutely. Well, that's about all the time we have for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us. We hope you learned some cool stuff about electric cars in India.
Always a pleasure to be here.
And hey, if you've got any ideas for future deep